you, and they're like, oh, I haven't done it. And I think that there's a weird thing going on where it's kind of like the discussions that I used to have about Facebook Live, where people were really interested in doing them, but then were like super nervous about it, getting all up in their heads about it and trying to figure out how to do it without doing it, or like no. So so today we're going to talk about what Facebook groups are, how they're different from LinkedIn groups for everybody who's kind of used to that old reality, and then how you could potentially be leveraging them for your business. So let's get started. Okay, so with Facebook groups, let's first talk about how they're different from LinkedIn groups. Facebook groups are very much like LinkedIn groups used to be back when they first started. So back probably, oh my God, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I mean, it really was that long ago. LinkedIn had the groups function, and what a LinkedIn group did for you back then is what Facebook groups are doing for you now. So with a LinkedIn group, you could either join a group or start a group. And what that group did is that essentially people inside of the group interacted extremely regularly about whatever the topic was, or they really did use it as a networking function. People were sharing pertinent information. They were sharing news about their subject matter, topic area. They were really using the groups as a way to communicate with each other, to build networks. There were people who were starting groups around specific functions and topic areas. It was excessively useful, like really, really useful place to be in a group on LinkedIn. And then I'm not sure if LinkedIn changed how they administer them, or if what I honestly think happened was that a few internet marketers, and when I say internet marketers, I mean people who spend some extremely high portion of their time trying to figure out how to game the system in order to make money. That's an internet marketer, not someone like what I do. I do digital marketing for a living. It's not the same thing. And so some internet marketers came along and figured out that depending on how the group settings were, you could access like all of the email addresses for everyone in the group. And they also figured out that because groups were so like useful and trusting, if you were doing a specific, I want to say a specific thing, but if your group was on a niche topic, then you might potentially be able to sell anybody in that group something that you had. If the group was yours, then you could use it as essentially as a kind of smarmy sales tool. And a lot of people really took advantage of that. And I think that that's part of why LinkedIn groups kind of started to decline, is that people were using them as sales tools and not as community groups, which is what they had initially been intended for, was that they were networking groups and community groups, and people started using them for sales function. And when they started doing that, it became like they stopped being useful altogether. And they were also not very well moderated, and the moderating functions of them made the job of being the moderator extremely difficult, like super, super difficult. So in the more recent years, probably in the last, I would say 2 or 3 years, the same type of functionality that used to happen on LinkedIn groups has actually started migrating over to Facebook. And what I will say is this: these Facebook groups that now exist totally validate everything that I've always said about how everyone who runs a business is a human. Because I think that I say that and people are like, well, B2B marketing is still B2B marketing. And I'm like, yes, except for that every marketing and sales is always to a person. And what LinkedIn or Facebook groups have now given us is kind of a very clear indication of the fact that that is absolutely true, like absolutely true. What you see in Facebook groups is you see groups that are, yes, there are mom groups and there are pet owner groups and there are specific niche groups around a specific topic area. Like if you are a limb amputee, then you can belong to a limb amputee group where you guys specifically talk about those topics. So it is both. I'm like a part of a women's networking group in Cleveland where there's, I think, thousands of members in that group, moderated by volunteers. And it's a fantastic group because the moderator actually does moderate. I am in groups for natural hair care. So, and the moderator actually moderates that group. So in that group, That group was actually started as a challenge group, which was fantastic. And then the person who was running it basically stopped running the challenges, but she kept moderating the group, so we didn't lose our group. She just stopped doing the thing that she was doing with the group. And I mean, it's amazing though how these groups can actually have such high functionality for people, regardless of whether it's a business group or a non-business group. Whatever the case may be, there are groups around dieting. I belong to several groups that are targeted at like promoting healthy eating or a specific type of eating. So if you are a keto dieter, there are keto dieting groups. There are, and when I say groups, I mean groups, like lots and lots of them. Some of them are hyper local, some of them are national, some of them are regional. There's groups for fraternities and sororities. There's groups inside of my fraternity. I'm in a sorority. There are groups inside of groups for my sorority. So we have like a readers group where, you know, people in my sorority who are avid readers, we're in a group where we talk about the books that we're reading. And I belong to other groups. Like there's so many different functionalities of groups. What does this mean for you as a business owner? First of all, the way that groups function now, there's several different types of groups, and LinkedIn is actually trying to revamp their groups to make it very functional the same way that Facebook did. But until that happens, Facebook groups are the place to be. And in Facebook groups, there's several types of Facebook groups. And I'm not going to use the proper terminology because they actually changed these names, like what it's called and how it's used, kind of, I won't say regularly, but they've changed them several times. And I can look it up, but again, I'm here live and I don't want to have to deal with that. So what I'm just going to do, and if you are in the comments and you're watching this and you know, like if I use the wrong term, but you know the term that I mean, please put it in the comments. I'd be happy for you to correct me. It's not a thing where I feel like I'm special. Tell me. So with Facebook groups, there are closed groups, and I believe closed and private are kind of the same thing. And in a closed group, that means that the information in the group, anyone in the group, your membership in the group is not public, meaning that the group itself is not public, meaning that people can find the group, but they have to ask to join. And once you are in the group, anything that you share in the group is private, meaning that it can't be shared. That little share button that is on every Facebook post, if you share something inside of the group, that post cannot be shared out publicly. It does not mean that someone can't screen capture and then share it, because people do all the time. I do that actually. Whenever I do, though, it's usually a meme, and I scrub the person, like I crop out the person so that they're not in there. But I absolutely do screen capture from groups all the time, because there's so many interesting things that happen that I go, oh wow, other people might want to know about this, and you know, I screen capture. I'm not screen capture to shame someone or to show like a video of something that people didn't want shown. Please don't do that sort of thing. It's actually quite horrible. But there are essentially, my point of bringing up the fact that you can do that is that even in a private and closed group, it's still a public forum, meaning that everybody in that group can see what you're posting, your comments that you're posting. And on top of that, if someone does screen capture something and doesn't scrub your name out, if you were posting it, then that could go out into the public. So you do want to still be relatively conscious about what it is that you're posting in private groups or closed groups. So there's private groups / closed groups, and then there are public groups, meaning that the group is open to essentially anyone to join, and the information being shared in the group is public, so that you can then share that out to anyone else, and anyone else in the group can share that out to anyone else. These are your basic two group types: is the public group and the closed group, or the open group and a closed group. Public versus private, open versus closed, same concept. One of them, you can share your content and everyone can see that you belong to the group. People can see that you belong. People in the group can share your information out unless you specifically post it not to be shared. And then in a closed group, it is completely private. There isn't any sharing ability, and your participation in the group is not public to your friends, unless, of course, someone inside of the group captures that information and shares it publicly. So there's no such thing in social media as completely private transactions. And anytime anyone says that there is, they are completely insane. There's no such thing as a completely private transaction on a public domain. So whenever people say stuff like that, I'm like, you're using a device to communicate with another human or many, many humans across, like using technology on a device that has the ability to take a picture of what you just did. There's no such thing. No such thing as private in that circumstance. Everything is potentially public, but in a private group, the idea is that you can post or share or comment or whatever in a manner that is private to the group. I belong to several groups that are private, and the information in them are private, and they are about sensitive topics. And so with that, and when I say sensitive, I don't necessarily mean political. I actually belong to several groups that are private that are completely not political at all. But the nature of the stuff that we're joining for might be private. So I mentioned before amputee groups. And so there may be, I am not personally an amputee, but I do have amputees in my family. I also have people in my family who have progressive diabetes or who have other conditions, mental health conditions. And sometimes there will be groups for these people that are private. And that is kind of great because that ends up being a safe space for them. Again, this is not a private in the case that they can't, if they share something that people won't necessarily be able to see it if someone in that group shares it publicly. But it really does provide kind of a safe space for people to be able to interact and transact in a fashion that will hopefully be respected and be private. Now, why is this useful to you as a business? For a variety of reasons, including whether or not you are B2B or B2C. This is useful because this behavior of group joining and sharing information is extremely common. It has replaced several other internet functions. It is a way for people who would use something like Reddit to actually, who wouldn't ever join Reddit, to participate in Reddit-like behaviors. It's a way for you to build a community around your topic area. It is a way for you to find out what your peer groups are doing in specific areas. It is just excessively useful. So let's give you an example. Let's say that you are an organization that makes the security, that you make security features for artwork at museums and galleries and things like that. So you have a product or service that does security, not physical human security, but the product goes onto the artwork or covers the artwork to make it secure so that people can't steal it or harm it or touch it or whatever. So that's your job. You make the cases, the screening, the lasers, all the things that go around artwork to make it a secure and not touchable and all those things inside of galleries. You might think that because that is a fully B2B function, there isn't anything about that that is a B2C. There's no, I mean, if you're a person, a regular old human, you're not necessarily going to buy any products like this for your home. Even if you do have priceless artwork in your house, you are at home. It is unlikely that you are going to put security features to keep people from touching the art, not to keep people from stealing it. Obviously, if you have priceless artwork in your home, you're going to have security in your home, but that's home security. It's not the same thing as full out gallery space security, where not only does the space need to be secured, but the individual pieces of artwork need to be secure and also need to be protected from the humans that are going to be viewing it. If you are in that circumstance where you are the owner of a business like that, or you're responsible for security, or you're responsible for marketing in that kind of environment or with that kind of product, the very first thing I would suggest you do is both to find the groups of gallery owners that exist on Facebook. So there will be Facebook groups of art gallery owners, period. I know that there are Facebook groups for art gallery owners. I know some gallery owners. And so if there are Facebook groups that are available to you as a person who sells these products, it would be fantastic for you to join those groups, especially the open ones, the ones that are public, because if you can join a public group, then they won't require that you be an art gallery yourself in order to join the group. Now, let me say this, most groups have very high standards for what are going to be allowed to post. Some have none, but most have some level of standards of what you can post inside the group. I am not by any means at any point suggesting that you join a group like the Art Gallery Owners group and then spam them. And when I say spam, I don't use that word lightly because I know what it means. And it is not just like having a conversation that people don't want to hear. That is not spam. That's just like talking. But I'm not saying that. I mean, go into someone else's group where they are the gallery owner and they're gallery owners group, and then all you're trying to do is post about your products. Product, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. Of course, I don't ever teach you guys to do that anyway. That is not how we roll here. That is not what we do. But if you are going to join one of those groups, then if that group is going to have members of, essentially your potential market, there are several ways that participating in that group could be beneficial for you as a business. The first way is that if you are simply listening to what it is that they have, problems and questions and concerns, you can be essentially a fly on the wall for your entire customer base by joining one of these groups. Just observe. That's all you're there for, is to observe. What is it that they have problems with? How are they expressing these problems? What kind of language are they using to express these problems? If you are a security feature owner, the person who is creating these security products, join the group to learn what your audience needs from their perspective. As someone who does one-on-one consulting on a regular basis, I will tell you that is the majority of your problems. Like the majority of small business owners, or business owners in general, doesn't matter how big or how small the business is, the majority of you have a hard time understanding your customer's problem from their perspective. And if you join a group that is specifically targeted at that audience, then you will automatically be getting their perspective on their problems, their issues, their concerns, because that's them talking. That's who it is in the group. And so that's what I mean by using a Facebook group. Using the group doesn't have to be that you start the group and it's your group and then people come to you for advice about security for galleries. That would be nice, but also not as useful as you joining groups that already exist and then listening to what their problems are and then using that information to inform your marketing and to inform your sales. Because if you look and you see, oh, they're having problems with X, Y, and Z, what are the products that we're doing? What are the products that we have that can either solve that problem or that we can modify to solve that problem? Is that a regional issue? Is that something that's only happening in the Southwest? Like you can ask them those questions. As someone who works in security, ask questions. Why do you think you're having this problem? Is it something like, what kind of security are you currently using? You can ask questions of people who are not your customers, the people who are legitimately using other products or not using any product at all, and use them as a sounding board. So if you're not in groups at all right now, I would highly suggest you start by joining. Join some groups, participate in some conversations, and under no circumstances do you have permission from me, Lindsay, to spam the group with your stuff. So this is not and I am the solution to your problem sort of situation. This is a listen first and then understand and ask questions kind of relationship. That's what you're there for. Now, if someone expressly asks for resources or things where you are the answer, your product or service is the answer, then absolutely. You know what, we actually do that. What I would do though is be super specific. So if someone says, you know what, we have a 9-foot by 10-foot piece of artwork that is 125 years old and is from Berlin, and the owner is super specific about what they want. They want, the person who is lending the artwork to our gallery wants X, Y, and Z security features, and we have never worked with anyone who does that. So who do you guys suggest? Then at that point you go in and you say, hey, by the way, we do large format security specifically for pieces over 100 years old. Here is the product with a link specifically to what it is that you sell on your website that does that, or with a link for them to make an appointment to talk directly to you. Give them some sort of call to action. What I would not do, and this is what a lot of people do in groups, and I think it's weird, is they say, I private messaged you, or I'm going to private message you, or I'm going to direct message you with my link or my answer or whatever. Don't do that. And the reason why that is not a good idea is because the Messenger app, when someone who is not connected to you sends you a message, it doesn't actually show up in Messenger. They have to go to a special place in Messenger in order to get those messages, to get that information. It is 2 or 3 levels of crazy, and you just don't want to deal with that. It would be better for you to just share all of the information and give them a way to contact you right there in the open, comments. And if this is a group under the context that it is a work related group, then there's no reason why you can't share your work phone number or your work email address in order for that person to reach out to you. Or like I said, a link to something like Calendly, which is how people make appointments with me, to get on their calendar or get them on your calendar so that you can have a conversation about that specific thing. That is what I mean by using groups wisely. It's not about spam. It's not about just cramming your products down someone else's throat. That's not what they're there for. What groups are there for is a means of building community, communication, and increasing participation with a bunch of people who have something in common, okay? That is what you should be there for, and that is what they are there for, okay? I would suggest highly that you think really hard about what kind of groups you should be belonging to, what kind of interactions you're having in these groups, how you can increase your expertise, your level of validity in your market space, the presence, the fact that people know about you, but without being salesy, because that is not what groups are for. And if you do that, you could easily start getting banned from groups. And I have seen people try to go into a group and all they're doing is sales pitches, and it's just not okay. If you want to join a group and be proactive, so if you are in that group with gallery owners and you've been in it for a while and you kind of are starting to understand what their problems are, you can then post as the owner of the security owner, participator, marketer, salesperson, I don't care who you are. If you're joining the group, you can post, but what I would suggest you post is questions. So if you hear the same problem coming up over and over and over again, and maybe your company does not offer a solution to that problem, then maybe you can ask the questions that will help you guys develop a good product. So you can say, okay, again, like I said, is this a regional issue? If you see that a bunch of people are having the same problems with their security features, then maybe you go in and say, okay, we don't have any clients who are in high altitudes. Do you guys think that you're having this problem because you're a high altitude gallery, or is it because there's a lot of dust in the air because you're in the high desert? What is causing these specific issues to happen at your gallery? Please give us input, because we want to make sure that we're developing great products that can help you guys. We don't have anything right now that would help you, right? So if that's the case, then you can then post a question to the entire group to see if people are willing to participate and helping you to develop products that will help them later. Now, I will say that little last tidbit strategy that I just gave you, that is where the gold is. That is exactly what you should be doing, because if you can listen to the group, listen to what their problems are, see how they're communicating around their problems, and then go back to your team and come up with questions. Like, go back to your marketers, your salespeople, your owners, whoever you're working with on your team, and you guys take that information and come up with a set of questions that might help you all develop products that serve them. Not only will it be useful, but at the point that you develop a product that actually serves them, you can go back into the group and say, hey, a few months ago, I asked the question X, Y, and Z, and then my team got together and tried to figure out how to solve you guys' problem. We actually think we came up with something. Here it is. Let us know if you guys, we would love to have someone tested or whatever. Like, communicate in a collaborative fashion inside of the group. They will love you forever. It is, and that is how you build community. That is how you develop a sense of ownership inside of an organization, inside of a group that is community. You can then become a thought leader in that community, even though you're not a gallery owner, because you're showing them your expertise, you're sharing with them, and you're working with them to build something that's actually useful to them. That is what you would do if you wanted to work within an organization, work within a group, I should say a group, not an organization, but work within a group to actually develop relationships that are going to be long-term, develop that professionalism and that level of expertise that they then expect great things from you and then want to work with you in the future, okay? Facebook groups, people. Facebook groups. I am really hopeful that LinkedIn groups are going to be doing the same thing, soon. They have been redeveloping them. They've been talking about it all year. The changes that are coming to groups. I have not seen that happen. I belong to several groups in LinkedIn, and they are all pretty much dead, meaning that no one is posting anything. And there are people who post inside of the groups now, but they're all spam, meaning that the only time that they're posting is when they need something. They're not posting proactively. They're only posting reactively. And I myself have been thinking about starting some groups and moderating them in order to find out more information about people who need to learn more about digital marketing, because there are a lot of internet marketers out there, and a lot of them do teach, and they a lot of times are just teaching people how to try to scam the system. And me personally, I just don't believe in that. Like, I don't believe in it because I don't think it's useful to the customer. And I also don't think it's useful to you to learn how to do something that's only going to work for a few weeks until the, Facebook figures it out and then stops you, or until Google figures it out and then stops you. And that's sort of, to me, I've never been the kind of person who was always trying to figure out, okay, if the teacher is going to, they said that they were going to test us on these 3 topics, well, then I need to figure out how to game the system so that I don't have to learn the topics, where I just have to learn how the teacher asks questions so that I always get the questions right without ever having to learn anything. I would rather spend my energy and effort learning the subject and not learning how to cheat the system. And that's sort of how I feel like internet marketers are, is that they spend a lot of time learning how to cheat the system and not learning how to actually work with humans. And so, so that's my soapbox on internet marketers. Some of them are great, some of them don't do that, but the majority of them are not. So anyway, Facebook groups, and again, the reason why I bring up internet marketers and Facebook groups is that there are a lot of internet marketers using Facebook groups to do the scammy, spammy thing. So when you are looking for groups, make sure that you're looking at groups that are run by the industry, so that they are networks within the industry, they are your customer segment. And if you're wondering whether or not a group is your customer segment, like maybe you have a product that would be extremely useful for arm amputees, well, find those groups, listen, see if your product is useful to them, and then think about trying to market to them instead of doing the other way around. Using Facebook groups as a method of market research is a fantastic idea, especially because it's better than any survey you're ever going to send, because these people are giving their unsolicited opinions about their own problems on a daily basis. Completely unsolicited opinions about their own problems. So join those groups, try to nurture relationships, learn the language, communicate like a human, all the things I normally teach, and you will be quite successful in using Facebook groups to promote your business, promote yourself, and build your expertise. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Soapbox over. If you would like to make an appointment with me, go ahead and messenger the page, and we'll get you on the calendar. We'll send you a link. We'll find a way to get you in. If you have had some sort of fantastic experience with Facebook groups, or if you've had horrible experiences, either way, let me know. I actually want to know. Put it in the comments below. I want to know what your experiences have been. And when you say that they're great or they're horrible, explain what that means, because you could say something's horrible and I could be like, that's exactly the experience you're supposed to have. So go ahead and put it in the comments. I will be looking and responding and talking with you all after this live. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a great week. Bye.